You'll never go out on a training ride and dig that deep.
Awesome. We won gold.
They're life ride.
Like, dude, I'm still figuring this out.
To lose sight of the fact that it's whoever goes faster.
Yo, this isn't a road race. This isn't a mountain bike race.
The sensei of sprint, Todd Shesky.
My eyes are coming out of my head. Just get
What's up, cycling fans? We got a killer show. Bike Loft East Neutral Race Report, brought to you by Pack Chatter. That's right, special edition of Pack Chatter today with the man Jeremy Clay as he breaks down the first two races of the Durty Bikes Gravel Series. Before we get there, though, we are going to hit our sponsors. First, let's talk about NYSBRA, the New York State Bicycle Racing Association. NYSBRA brings you all the good behind-the-scenes stuff that goes on with racing in all disciplines across New York State. Cross, gravel, road, crit, time trial, the whole deal. These guys and girls put out schedules, they do permits, they do upgrades, all that kind of good stuff. So hit them up at nysbra.com or on Facebook to see what they're up to and support them as they support you. Also, we're brought to you by Legacy Bikes. That's Legacy with an I, Legaci bikes.com. At Legacy Bikes, you can get your kid up on two wheels right away. My daughter's got one. She got her balance bike from Legacy Bikes. She's not quite 2 years old yet, and she can walk on that balance bike and start to ride around on it. She loves it. She was out on it just the other day. So they're never too young to get them going, and my man Todd at Legacy Bikes will hook you up and get you what you need to get your little one started on the sport that we all love. We're also brought to you by the Durty Bikes Gravel Series, which is what we're here to talk about today anyway. So we'll do a little plug here for the championship race, the Hills of High Tour. Brand new event put on by Andy August from Park Ave. If you've been in Western New York cycling at all over the last 30 years, you know Andy. He's put on tons of races. He used to run the Park Ave bike shop for quite a long time. His family's really involved with racing, and they're going to put on a really great event for us. We're really excited to have them and see the course and be at that championship race for Durty Bikes. So if you're listening to this when it comes out on Tuesday, registration is open through Wednesday online. I believe they're doing day of as well. And the race will take place in Naples on Saturday, May the 4th. So come out, crush some gravel, enjoy the party, and celebrate the third and final race of the 2019 Durty Bikes Gravel Series. All right. So with that in mind, let's get into the episode here with Jeremy. For the Durty Bikes series this year, Jeremy runs all the neutral support for the series, and he's run neutral support in my events for several years. And this year we decided to throw a GoPro on him so we could see the leaders and see what that racing looks like, particularly when we have some really world-class guys coming in with Curtis White and Anthony Clark and Mike Jones. And, of course, the GOAT J-Pow are all out there on course, and Jeremy's got some great footage of it. So we put that together in a companion with this podcast. So if you go to my YouTube page, type in my name, Tony Seiler, Sylor, and you'll be able to find some video footage that's compiled with Jeremy's from Jeremy's bike. Lots of really cool stuff. And then in the podcast today, we kind of break down what he saw and how that works and how the racing's developed with those guys. Additionally, we address some controversy from Cyclocross magazine. They published a picture of us from us with Jeremy doing neutral support, and have been really supportive of the series and published a lot of great content for us. And they asked the question, should there be neutral support at gravel races? And a lot of people said gravel races are supposed to be unsupported, and felt that was sort of changing the sport and changing the discipline. So we addressed that conversation as well. So jump in and check that out and see what you think. Lastly, before I get you into the episode, I want to give a really special thanks to Handsome Young Ladies. They provided the music for this episode, and they provided the music for all our highlight reels for Durty Bikes. So there's a few things on the YouTube channel that have their music, including the companion with this, and some drone footage. They also played at the Ossian Giant at our post-race party, and they have an album coming out of covers on May 17th. So you can check them out on their website, handsomeyoungladies.com. And certainly if you're looking for a great band for an event, hire them because they absolutely rock. So special thanks to them for letting us use their music. All right, so I'm going to drop you in and check out the Bike Loft East Neutral Race Report with Jeremy Clay and Pack Chatter.
We're back. We got a great show for you today. I'm here with my man Todd Chesky and Jeremy Clay for a special edition of Pack Chatter, the Bike Loft East Neutral Race Report. What's up, guys?
Hey, not too much on this end. Looks like you guys have been in a lot of gravel action, and roads. Obviously, the real road, not the gravel road stuff, is kicking up. So it looks like full season is about to hit full flight here. So pretty exciting times. The weather's breaking a little bit, and although weekend would have known it, right, with 38 and a little bit of rain, but I think we're turning the corner, so it's exciting times, man, and really exciting stuff on the gravel scene as well, man. It's been some cool stuff out there.
Yep, for sure. Glad to be back on the show here. We've been on the road for a while now since we started working back with you guys this year, and obviously we've had some mixes of weather. I was so glad to not have to work from the motorcycle this weekend because we had snow here in the Syracuse area, so definitely glad to have a weekend off, but we're ready to get back on it this next week.
Yeah, I always call this weather gravel weather because I think that's part of the fun of it is when you're fighting the weather, especially because I'm the one in the truck not fighting it. So it's all good from my perspective. But we got really great weather the first two gravel races, so we can't complain about that at all. And it looks like this weekend's shaping up to be really good for the championship race. So we're lucking out this spring.
Yeah, we definitely are. I mean, last year the weather that we had at the first race with, the high started in the morning right at the gun, and it just dropped through the entire race. And, we'd see snow spitting out on the top of the hills, and it was definitely the coldest day I'd ever worked on the motorcycle.
Very good. Well, I'm glad we're setting records every time you come out. So we got a few things that we want to do today, and this is a little different than our normal podcast because we have a video companion with it. So if you go to the YouTube page, you can see the video from Jeremy's bike from the first two races. So we kind of planned this before the series started, and we talked about we're going to sort of see the perspective that you get running neutral support at the front of the race, particularly with just some really awesome talent that's there, and then kind of break the races down and share the video so people can see the video and sort of hear from you what that looks like. Now, before that, we get into that conversation, in the process of kind of putting this together, it came up last week through Cyclocross Magazine. They published a picture from one of our races and have done some nice coverage of the events, and we really appreciate that, where they posted a picture of you running neutral support, and they asked everybody, like, do you think there should be neutral support at gravel races? Which is not a question I ever really thought too much about. But it invoked quite a few passionate responses on both sides of the aisle. So even though that wasn't part of the plan for this, let's start there, and then we'll talk about the races and break the races down. So I've got tons of thoughts there, but I want to start with you guys. So what do you guys think? Some of the feedback was that it's, gravel race is supposed to be self-supported, and it's roadies ruining gravel and those kind of things. So what do you guys think about neutral support at gravel races?
Well, I think, first you'd have to kind of say where did the idea that it has to be self-supported come from? What started that with gravel? Is it because it's more of a mountain bike thing to begin with? And it's kind of more of a mountain bike thing. And I'm not like that intimately familiar with most mountain bike races other than the couple I did in Central America where you were self-supported, except for the aid stations that you could stop at. So maybe it kind of comes from that, but given that it's really this mix and it's kind of similar to cyclocross where you'd have pits, it's kind of interesting that people would frame that. So where were people kind of coming from when they said it should be this way? I guess that's kind of where my first question would lie.
Yeah, I was kind of questioning that whole thing too. I grew up racing mountain bikes under the Norma banner, and everything was self-supported. As a matter of fact, I was almost DQ'd from a race when I was a kid because somebody was standing next to me while I was actually changing a flat tire on the course. They didn't touch it or anything, but they were standing there, and I had to show video of someone that actually recorded me changing the flat by myself to prove myself to not get disqualified from a Norva race. So I thought it was pretty crazy when I started reading those things. It's like, okay, we're going back to that standard. If that's what they want, I guess that's what they can have. And I get that for those like ultra marathon distances, where it's, it's hard to cover the entire race and be somewhat fair and somewhat neutral in that aspect. I mean, it's hard for us to cover every single person out on the race course when we have even just a local race like this. Obviously, we try to take care of the money first, but then as soon as we're done with the point of the race, the head of the race there, we're right straight back out onto the course, ushering every single rider that we can get into the finish. This last race at Prattsburgh, case in point, I think I came across the finish line somewhere like 10 times, ushering groups in, and then switched over to the four-wheeler. I let one of my other guys on the program hop on my moto and go out and take some laps on the moto, and I switched back to the four-wheeler and took care of some racers out there with that. So, we're trying to get everybody in. It's not about, we obviously go to the head of the race to start with, and then after that's done, then we take care of everybody on the road that we possibly can.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a misconception of what different gravel races look like. I think is part of it. I think part of it's a misconception of people not understanding what you do at a gravel race. Like you said, you're at the front of the race, sort of taking care of the money, as you said. When I put out my pre-race notes, I always say, look, hey, these guys are there and they're great and they're going to help you out, but their first priority is going to be at the front of the race, and you need to be self-supported because they can't be everywhere at once. It's just not possible. They'll find you eventually if you're out there long enough, but you don't want to have to wait for that, So everybody should be with the mindset that they've got to be self-supported and that you guys are just keeping the front of the race in contention, which you did exceptionally well, particularly in the women's race where both women's winners, the first race and the second race, two different ladies that won there, both of them had pretty substantial mechanicals that would have knocked them out of the race, and you guys got them back up and running. They chased back and they won. So it's keeping that strongest rider in contention to win in that particular style of racing. That doesn't mean that every gravel race needs neutral support, particularly like you said, long ones, like 200 miles, you can get a flat, put it back, chase back maybe. You're out there for quite a long time. When you're talking about our courses, they're pretty short compared to that. So if you have a long mechanical, you're just done. Like that's just the end of your race.
Well, and I'll say, are you guys familiar with the there was a race called Race for the Wind or Race the Wind up outside of Watertown. Oh gosh, I'm gonna go back. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the windmills race.
Myself. Yeah, exactly. You remember it. So, did you ever do that, Jeremy?
No, we had talked to them a couple times, but the race ended up folding before we ever kind of got everything set up with them to do some support with it.
Right.
But it was definitely one of those ones we looked at. We definitely talked to them.
Right. I didn't know if you rode it or not. If you were.
Oh no.
So, but I rode that in the first. It was like the second or third year, and this is probably going back 10 years almost now, right? So I was kind of predating the gravel, I guess, right? But we were out there with like basically cross setups, right? And I was out there with like some 30 millimeter tubeless, right? And I take I'll take a tube with me, and they kind of had not real neutral support, but a little. So it would not like what you guys are doing, right? So I was kind of looking at this from an evolutional type viewpoint, right? So they were kind of the first kind of real gravel fire trail around these windmills up there, and Corey Burns was there, and I think Dan Timmerman was there maybe one year, and Ryan Nye went, and Matt Dickinson, and so we wound up like breaking away in the beginning, right? We hit this baby head rock section, and first Ryan's out. He's got cross tubulars on. Boom, he double flats, and he's gone. And I'm, kind of chuckling, like, well, there's one guy down, right? And of course, as fate has it, 37 seconds later, now I'm flat, right? I'm like, well, see you guys later, right? And there wasn't follow vehicle there, and that race is like 2 hours long. And so there you are standing there fixing a flat, which takes you several minutes. And I had these tubeless things, right? So now I got slime going everywhere, and I'm trying to stuff a tube in there, and it was a disaster, right? And I wound up like basically I flatted like 2 or 3 more tubes, and I finally had to get in the back of some pickup truck, and so but it was it was day over though. Point being that even for a guy like Ryan, or anybody trying to fix a flat, you weren't catching up. Unless the other guy's flatted too, which it's a real negative experience. So I think if anybody's kind of down on the thing, it was like, well, there was a case where it wasn't, and it was rough, and it was having somebody there to say, here's a wheel, and I could have taken off. That would have been a game changer.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you go back to like the Black Fly, which was initially a mountain bike race back when I was young, when I remember first kind of getting into it, that's what I remember. The one time like I was setting up for the Black Fly, and I was like, "Ooh, I'm gonna run these semi-slick mountain bike tires." When Richie launched that Speed Max years ago, and like I show up, and everybody's like, "What are those tires?" And I was just kind of like, "Hey, it's what I got," and I thought it would be cool to run it, and it was super fast, and I really liked it. It was easy for me, But yeah, these races have evolved now, and now the Black Fly, like, I mean, everybody's riding a cross or a gravel bike in it for the most part, except for you've got a small contingent of people who are riding fat bikes and a small contingent who are still riding, regular mountain bikes. For the most part, I mean, the gravel scene has changed. Yes, you've got your big grandiose races like the Trans Iowa, things like that, where no, I don't think neutral support's necessarily the right thing. And you can make up time when you come into one of the gas stations to get your food fill up. If you want to make up time that you had because you had a mechanical, you can do it there.
Right.
In these types of races, one of the things you can see from the video, these guys are riding at road race speeds. They need support like a road race gets.
Right. And that's key. That's the key difference too, is what we're doing. We're not trying to do Trans Iowa or Dirty Kansas or, what I mean? Those are awesome events, like great, but that's not what we're going for. And those kind of ultra endurance events, part of it is that you're self-sustained, and that's what they advertise, and that's what you're showing up for. But like you said, these guys, this is a road race sort of dynamic, and that's really what we've been trying to evolve, and we're still working on it, particularly with the course setups and how to make that both interesting and have that sort of classic style racing that cross racers and road racers can really get into, but the courses are still hard and interesting for everybody throughout the course, no matter where they are, whether at the front or not. But in order to have that classic style road race-ish feel, neutral support's gigantic to keep people in contention, because you don't want to see, the best rider in the race lose because he got a flat tire. That's not any fun for anybody.
And even in the mountain bike world these days, you still can get support. You can have, if you're at a national race, you can have a mechanic in the pit. The mechanic can't actually do the work for you, but they can talk you through what it is. So you'll have a mechanic in the pit at a mountain bike race who has chains already cut to length, spare tires and stuff like that all set up, ready to go. So it's like really quick. Like you come into if you've got a problem, you get to the pit, you do the quick work to it, but you've got someone right there who can literally talk you through everything if you don't know exactly what to do. The sports have evolved to make the racing faster and make it more exciting. And in this situation, I mean, they're already racing fast enough. I mean, I there was one point where I tried to shoot with the camera down to show the speed, but there was one climb that these guys were going up the other day at the Prattsburgh race, and they were doing like 18 miles an hour up a dirt road. Uphill, 18 miles an hour, like that's fast. That's moving for these guys,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you can see in some of those clips too where the speeds are high, and I think in one or two of them, I think I see somebody dodging around some of the bigger holes and things, and you can see like you get a small pack or something, and you're not going to see everything. Stuff's coming up fast, and it'd be real easy to get a pinch flat or something like that in a scenario like that where you're just not going to be able to get around things, and then I mean it's gonna be hard enough to chase back at those speeds, even if you're right behind me with that moto, and you get that wheel in and I lose 20 seconds.
Yeah,
it's hard. That's still hard. It's not like, oh, well, you just totally. It's like, no, you still got a big fight on your hands.
Yeah, in a road race, you get a flat or something like that, and generally in the wheel car with an official in there, they'll let the racer have a little professional foul and let them sit on the back of the wheel car a little bit as you're working your way back up into the into the group, at least so that they don't have to kill themselves getting back on. And in this situation, they don't get that.
Right.
We get them fixed, we get them back on the course, and we give them a good shove. But that's it. I mean, when you come back up to them, you can't tow them back into a group or something like that on gravel with a motorcycle. You're not going to. It's not safe. It's not safe for the racer. So that's not happening. It's literally just helping them get back into the race as fast as possible so that they're still in contention when they're at the front of that race. The rest of the people that are at the back of the group, that we're going back out and servicing on the course after the fact, they're just happy to be able to ride the whole thing to the end. They're like, man, I don't have to walk. I don't have to hop in the sag wagon, sit on the side of the road for 20 minutes. I mean, I know Mr. Jake Castor there gave us a hard time this last race because I guess he flatted. Then he flatted again on one of our neutral wheels. And he gave one of my mechanics a hard time. He's like, I thought you guys were neutral. Nobody's back here. It's like, sorry, Jake, you were a little far behind.
Yeah, he was
with you, but he wasn't falling in the mud.
To me, I was like, yeah, the race is down the road, man. You got to be in the race if you want the support. But
did you tell him he was lucky that there was still a finish line up when he got in? He was so far back.
Yeah. He's gonna love to hear that when he listens to that. But back aside from Jake Castor and him being toward the front of the race and chasing, that people who are even further back, like you were talking about, like the other important point is everybody other than the top couple of people in these races are amateurs, and those guys who are way back, they're racing a few times a year, maybe a little bit more, and they're taking time away from their family and they're spending money to be there and they're traveling, and it's a big commitment for them to come out and race a really hard course and to get a flat and not be able to finish it. Like, that sucks. Like, that's not fun for anybody. But to be able to get that back on and get back in and even finish it when you guys are out there is huge. It makes it worthwhile for them.
Exactly. At the Ossian, when we were done with that, when I was done with the finish of that race for the head of the race there, I went back out and just that loop on what is it, like there's 3 roads. It's like Forest, or it's something up to Forest Road. I can't remember the climb. But that loop that's right there at the end, it's got that last narrow section.
Oh, the Fitch Hill and the swamp there.
Right, Fitch Hill to Forest Road, and then something else back down. I went back out and probably did 8 laps of that. I literally would just come down, and your marshals were all ready for me. When I got to the bottom of the hill, I took a left instead of going right with the race, and went back over and then back up Fitch Hill, and I just kept going around and around. And I saw some people 2 or even 3 times when I went around that, depending on how fast they were going up, but they just loved the fact that there was someone out there just keeping an eye on them, and they're like, oh, we heard the moto, so we know we're safe, Yeah. So it's just
especially that late when they're crushed and it's real late in the race. But that's a good transition here. So let's talk about the races themselves and just the point of view of being on that lead car and or that lead bike rather, and what you're seeing. Particularly out of the top guys there. So we can start with Ossian, and you can kind of work us through there, and Prattsburgh, and we could talk about kind of the standings and some really, really awesome performances that we saw.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you start right into the video there, you get into it. I think it's like 47 seconds in. I'm just trying to look at my notes, so I'm from that versus my notes. I actually take notes when I'm on the moto as to what's going on with the race. So I'm trying to put them all together, but 47 seconds in on that video, give or take, you've got the race is literally just blown apart, and that I would say it's just a few minutes into the race, because it's when they get to the first dirt road section and they get that first steep pitch. Anthony Clark blew the entire race apart. Now the thing is the way I look at it, and everybody thinks he's attacking. I don't think he's attacking. I think that dude's got one speed. It's just fast.
He does. Yeah, he has one speed. It's called attack, though.
Exactly. He is going all the time.
Yes.
And yeah, so he blew it apart, and Jones and White they pulled themselves together and kind of stuck with it. Kevin Edwards was kind of floating there in no man's land. And then, shortly thereafter, in your video, it was about a minute 42, but it was kind of a ways into the race there, actually. Edwards, Powers, Timmerman, and a couple other guys, I think there was about 7 or 8 guys total in that pack, had kind of formed a chase group or I should say that's the main peloton if you want to go, road style, had kind of formed a group to try to trace back, but you had, Clark was up ahead about 40 seconds, and then you had Jones and White were kind of working together really well. and then the other group was a little over 2 minutes at that point behind everything. So going to a little bit deeper, and then there's actually a shot where Jones and White were sitting there talking, and I was giving them some updates as to like time and stuff like that. And there was a little shot where you could see Clark just up ahead. Shortly after that, Clark actually just like he looks back and he's just like, "Come on, guys!" and he just waves his hand and just like kind of gets the guys to kind of come back into the group. And it was, from that point, it was a 3-man show. Those guys just, I mean, they put the screws to it, especially through. I think there was a section I call the pothole section. Out there, it was just hole after hole. I mean, I was picking up water bottles and doing this and doing that. Like I literally, like every time I'd see one of the guys lose a water bottle, that's one of the things we do out on the race course. With neutral support, if we see a guy lose a water bottle, we stop and grab that water bottle because that's really important, especially when you get later into the race. And for Jones, it was a big thing. He actually ended up, when we get down to that last climb, when you turn off from that forest road, he started cramping so bad. You could just see it. He was literally like punching his legs, trying to knock out the cramps. And he was joking around to me on the motorcycle. He's like, "Oh, I did this in a crit once and it worked, so I'm trying it." But he just got spanked up that climb by those two because the cramps were just killing him. So yeah, White. That was when Curtis and Anthony just took off on that last climb in the dirt section and got themselves right up and over and back onto the asphalt. And then it was just a 2-man show from that point. Descending was quite fun watching those guys ride downhill.
Yeah.
They were moving, just trying to get themselves back down to the finish line. And then about a mile or mile and a half to say before the finish line, unfortunately the GoPro battery ran out before we got to that point. But Curtis and Anthony, like they kind of like pulled a truce for a few seconds, and like Curtis was in front and Anthony was following him. And obviously that's really easy for Anthony because Curtis is like gigantic compared to him. And he was able, they pulled a truce, they went to shake hands, and then Curtis, he moved behind Anthony. So then that was it. Like Curtis had him in front of him the rest of the descent. I was just like, that was a sly move.
Yeah.
Obviously your finish line video shows it well, coming around that last turn, coming into the finish there, those guys were just, sprinting it out. But Curtis definitely was ready for the win on that one.
Yeah, they've had 2 tight sprints, and Anthony afterward, he always says he's the butterfly and Curtis is the bull. He says he floats up the hills, and he's like a butterfly, and he's going, but he goes on the flats and the downhills. He goes, Curtis is just a bull. He just runs through everything, and that dynamic I think is really fun to watch because you said Anthony's just constantly putting the pressure on the climbs in both of the races, and Curtis weathers it until he can get to that sprint.
Yeah, definitely. He shows his true grit there, just being able to stay on him. Just keeping that tempo, not getting outside of his limits or anything like that. Just keeping the pace going, and that carried into Prattsburgh actually. I don't know if we want to move on to Prattsburgh now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Powers went on the early attack. Like as soon as they got off from. Trying to remember what the name of that road was. I've got the map here pulled up. I'm just going to pull it really quick here. But Powers went on that early attack just after they went. I think those are a bunch of onion farms out there, right?
Oh yeah, the leaks there. Yeah, on it's Muck Road because that's the Muck.
It's actually when they turn. I think it was on Muck Road, and then when they turned into Bean Station Road. Yep. Powers went on the attack. I think it was because there was a pretty strong headwind out that way, and he just pulled away. And I got to give props to Tim Paul for going with him.
Yeah,
he did a phenomenal job out there with Powers. Stuck with him pretty much right up until the KOM climb, and that's when the main group with Clark and White started to come back. They were really pulling him in. But Powers was able to stay just ahead of him up through the KOM and get over that KOM. But those guys got right on him at that point. So then it was a 3-man show for quite some time after that. Those guys were fighting it together really well. And I'm trying to think. They went around. Obviously, you guys had showed some phenomenal, what do you want to call it, group camaraderie with the guys when they came up to the water station there at the top of the. You'll have to bear with me here on those names.
Is the bottom of Hungry Hollow.
Bottom of Hungry, yeah. So when they got up there to the station,
their first pass on Hungry Hollow. Yep.
Yeah, when they grabbed, that's when I started the recording for you guys because I thought that'd be about enough time to be able to try to make it all the way to the finish line this time.
Yeah. So no, you got real good stuff there, and that was cool the way they kind of stopped and did that. And then of course Anthony attacks them like almost right after. He lets them get back on the bike and stuff. But I love that all right, yeah, we're cool. We're going to get some water, but then it's back, it's game on again. They're not taking it easy on each other out there by any means.
Yeah. And I loaded up with water too, because those guys, the way they were going, the way they'd sucked down water the week before, I wish I'd have had more water on the motorcycle with me the week before. So this time I threw a bunch of water into my jacket and it was able to take care of those guys out on the road out there. So, they kept going and just battling it. But, it was on the second time up the KOM climb was when Anthony really shined. He really just pulled away. He just showed a phenomenal climb, and Powers kind of started cracking there and kind of getting off the back and just going through all the gravel, especially the fast descents into that one section that was just horrendous. The rutted out area there.
The Newton descent there after the second climb.
Yep. So they got into that, and it was just, Anthony just floated through it like a butterfly. Curtis was flying too, and he got back on, and the two of them were riding together fairly well. Powers, he almost ran into the back of the motorcycle. I was sitting on the side of the dirt there, trying to just let him get through, so I didn't impede him if I wasn't moving as fast. Because man, those guys can fly so much faster through there than I could on the motorcycle, because the way that road was just rutted up. But yeah, Powers almost ran right into the back of me. But I think he had his head down a little too much there, trying to gruel to get back on. So, but from that point, it was pretty much just kind of the guys were separated a little bit, and Curtis finally pulled Anthony back in. I think it was right at mile 40, right?
Yeah, that was about that was up on top of Harrisburg Hollow. So from the footage, it looked like, and this is people who know the course and have raced it before in particular, it'll make sense. But it looked like Clark attacks on the second lap around the KOM climb and really seems to hold that down through Two Rod and then up the Newton climb where he attacks again, which that climb's no joke, and then down that Newton descent and then up the Robinson climb, and then finally Curtis comes back to him where you're given those split times in the video, which I thought that was a really cool part of the video too, is you walking up and pulling up and talking to him and having conversations with him. What's it like being in the race there where these guys are really just suffering and but at the same time really dialed into what they're doing and being having conversations with them at that point?
Well, it's really cool because I think it's kind of one of those things. Those guys are so deep into it. And you come up to them and you give them just a little fragment of information, and they're like, "Oh, wait a minute, yeah, okay, I can do something now. Like I've got some information, I've got something to work with. Like I know how far the guy in front of me is or how far behind it is. Like even Powers, when he finally did get dropped, he was like, well, how far back is the next group? Because he was, it's like I might not be able to catch these guys, but I can stay in front of the next group if I know that they're so far behind." So it's just that kind of that thought and that knowledge just to have. So to be able to provide that with them and provide that to them, and then even just like again, it's one of those things like I'm going to put a rack. I'm working on it right now. I've been working on manufacturing a rack to hold water bottles on the back of the motorcycle so that I can carry more. So if somebody's out there and needs one really bad, they can pull it off. I was literally stuffing those water bottles from the feed station in my jacket, so they were like shoved into the sleeve of my jacket, and I'm on the motorcycle trying to keep notes, trying to keep time, trying to make sure the guys' bikes are working, and yanking water bottles out of my jacket in the midst of this whole thing. So, I've got one water bottle carrier on the handlebar, but that's usually for me. Usually I just have a bottle on there for me to take a sip every so often. But now we're really like trying to figure out, can we fabricate a rack to be able to go on there and be able to carry wheels and water bottles so that there's just some extra for the guys out there on the course. Cause these guys are hitting it so hard. It'd be so nice to be able to pull up and have them have water.
Yeah, what
Yeah.
about having a somebody? Is there room for a passenger on there? Is it even feasible to have two people on like the four-wheeler to basically, be able to work that stuff for you?
So we've thought about it. The thing is so if you look at the big Nutra Support race programs, or if you look at like the races on the road, you've always got two guys on the motorcycle.
Right.
Our program always runs one guy. And the reason we do is because it's just much more cost effective. All of our local races, we wouldn't be able to, we couldn't afford to go to the races if we had to run two guys on every motorcycle.
Right.
Because it would be, it wouldn't be cost effective for the race program, the race promoter, or anything like that to be able to. I'll tell you right now, there's no way that I would ever want to carry somebody on the back of some of these roads. Trying to have two people on the motorcycle do that. I mean, the thing is we, one of the things that makes us different in the fact the way we do neutral support is the fact that we actually run a dual sport bike. So to go back to the whole talk about gravel and neutral support, we run a dual sport bike. We don't run BMWs or anything like that, like you'd see a lot of the officials running in a road race. We run dual sports because they're a lot easier to handle. If we got to put the bike off in the ditch to get out of the way of the racers so we don't have any catastrophes or anything like that, we run a dual sport so we can do that. And when it comes to the gravel, it made that transition from doing road racing support over to gravel that much easier. Literally all we have to do is throw a different tire on the motorcycle. We can just throw a knobby tire on there. Sometimes we don't even change the tire. Sometimes we've got the same tires year round, depending on what tire we're running on what motorcycle.
Sure.
So it really comes down to that. So luckily for us, we've got the bike setup is just dialed for us. We've changed the racks up a little bit. I tried a new rack profile this last race just because I wanted to see if it was any different. It worked a heck of a lot better. So we'll have the same rack profile on the other motorcycle at this next race this weekend. And it's just trying to adapt to the best way we can. So
What do you think about side by sides? We put one out for the first time. We used them for just a sweep vehicle this year on both the races. I'm wondering for water in particular, maybe more so than neutral support.
There's for the gravel stuff, those things. There's so many options. The four wheeler's easy. It works well. You could have the same thing with a four wheeler. You could do with a side by side. Again, the only issue that runs there just comes down to the legality of having stuff on the road. Luckily, out your way, we've got the support of all the local municipalities and the police and everything. So they're more of like, hey, this is out on the course because it makes more sense to have visibility and you can see where the racers are. So it actually makes the racers safer when it comes to the traffic and stuff that are on some of the paved roads. So it's just a safety issue in that aspect. The side by sides, unfortunately, aren't in New York State, can't be licensed like a four wheeler can. Okay. So unfortunately, they're not going to have as much flexibility on the dirt roads. They're fine, but when it comes to the asphalt roads, there's a lot of legality that comes down to that. So unfortunately, in New York State, that's just one of those things that kind of holds back on it. We've looked at it. We know kind of like what's going on with that stuff. So we really, try to stay on top of that. The motorcycles honestly make the most sense just because we can cover so much. The other thing is with the four wheeler, doesn't always make the sense. It took me a good, I shouldn't say me, but me and my crew, it took us a good 3 hours to clean all the bikes that were on the back of the four wheeler because that race was this last weekend, or the Prattsburgh race was so muddy that it literally coated the bikes on the back of the four wheeler.
Yeah, it was two pretty different feels between the two races in terms of the course and just the mud and the weather. I felt like the first one, and you could tell me if I'm wrong here, I felt like the first one had that little more classics road style a little bit, especially with the way the brake ran and sort of the way the course flowed. Whereas, Prattsburgh is a little hillier and a little more technical and just sort of a slop fest.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Ossian, obviously it had its high speed stuff. It was super dry. I mean, there was times when it was like kind of dusty dry, especially right off the bat, the first few climbs that you got out on the road there, it was insane as to how fast and how dry it was. You get into Prattsburgh though, and it was a whole different ball game. I mean, we constantly had rain kind of in the forecast, kind of in the sky and stuff like that. Is it going to rain? Is it not going to rain? We got lucky. It didn't really it didn't really spit anything on us during the actual race, but man, was it wet out there. It was a slog fest the entire time. My motorcycle was so dirty I couldn't even see my headlight after the whole thing was done. So I posted a couple of pictures to Instagram because I think that's the muddiest my bike's ever been after any event that I've worked. So it was phenomenal. I loved it.
So what about going into the third race? We got Clark and Curtis are tied, I think, dead even on the points with Powers right behind him. I don't believe Powers is gonna be at the third race, although there's a rumor that maybe he is. But definitely the other two guys are coming. I talked to Curtis. I was texting with Curtis actually just before we came on, and he's gonna put a GoPro on for us for the third race. So we'll put one on you and we'll put it on his bike too, so we can get his point of view, which might be cool. But I know you haven't seen the course yet down there, but what do you think? How do you think that plays out particularly with those two guys battling out for the series and the sort of close racing they've had so far?
Well, I mean, on my side of things, watching the race with those guys, I mean, it'll be one thing to see who goes for KOM points. I mean, there's obviously going to be some KOMs on this, and back in Prattsburgh, that second climb, was that second climb a KOM? Did they actually get KOM points for the second time up it?
No, just the first time through.
Just the first time? Because, man, the way Clark went up that, I would have thought that they were going for KOM points there. Because it looked like he launched an attack strictly just to try to get more KOM points. But, I mean, obviously that's going to be one of the deciding factors. The KOM points are going to be important on the race course. Coming down to the finish, obviously, I think Clark is going to want to get a win in. I mean, if you really look at, to finish second behind Curtis twice, he's going to want to do something to try to break that streak and show off a little bit there and do his sponsors right in that side of things. Not that he doesn't do it already. He definitely does. He's phenomenal to watch race, but I think he's definitely going to go for, he's going to go for a win because he honestly, he deserves it at this point. So the way
he animates a race for sure. Afterward, Powers, I was talking to Powers like as he finished, and he's like on the bike, half coming off, going, "This was so hard. I don't know why you talked me into this, Tony. This is ridiculous." And he's like laughing as he's telling me what a horrible person I am for making him go do that. And then he's like, and Ant is just as bad. He goes, he just kept attacking the entire race. He's like, Anthony, we have like 4 minutes on these guys. Like, you can let off the gas a little bit. And he just keeps going and going. Right. But I think he wanted to get away from Curtis. He wanted to beat him that week and wanted to use the elevation to his advantage.
Yeah. So I think you're going to see him. He's going to do the same thing again. He's just going to be, the Energizer Bunny there, just like going. He's going to launch it, and he's probably going to do it right from the gun. So yeah. It'll be phenomenal to watch. It would be really great to see Powers come back out and finish off the series, especially right off from his retirement announcement. Just to be out here and see him do that again, it would be phenomenal. I'd love to see it. It would be great for the race series out this way, and it'd be really cool just to have him back out again.
So what do you, from your perspective, when you're out there, Jeremy, and Clark, I mean, I'm watching the video, and the titles come on there, and Clark attacks. I think I saw Clark attacks at least 7 times, right? And I'm like, so he's obviously, I'm like, he's going again, and when I hear about these KOM points, it makes me think Clark would seem like Anthony's going to be the one going for him. And what was Curtis's response like? Was it sharp on it? Was he a little slow to get after it, or what's kind of your impression about when Clark's throwing these attacks? What's the response? Is it sort of like, oh my God, I'm so sick of going after these things, and he's going to snap up these points, or is it like, no, we're right on it. There's no reason right now because there's no points, but when there's points on it, I may change it. What's your feel on that?
Well, like I said before, I honestly don't think Anthony really attacks. I've never seen him like jump out of the saddle and just launch an attack. Like, that's the thing. The whole time I've seen him, he seems to be steady, But when they go uphill, he just holds the same pace. You know, if they're approaching a hill at 22 miles an hour, when they start up the climb, he's still doing 22 miles an hour. He's just like, screw you guys, I'm just keeping the same pace. I'm pedaling as fast as I can, and I'm going to keep this pace up the climb. Whereas everybody else slows down a little bit, like normal human beings do when you hit a climb. You know,
Right.
So it never seems like he's really throwing attacks. I've never seen anything that looks like an attack from him. He's pedaling with wings because the guy just flies.
Right.
It literally is. That's the thing, you know, being out there, you don't really see it, you know, unless you're in the right spot and you see him kind of pulling away from guys. Being out there with those guys on the road, on the motorcycle, being able to watch the thing right in front of you, literally just unfolding in front of you every second of the way, he just doesn't look like it takes any effort to keep those pedals turning over. And so he literally just walks away from those guys. So, yeah, for sure, he's going to go for KOM points right away. You know, it's the first whatever the first KOM climb is. Like I said, like you guys said, I haven't seen a course yet on this. I mean, nobody really has. So not having a good background on this as to what this race course is going to be like, he's going to go for those points because he's going to need those, you know, for the series purpose.
Right.
When it comes to the finish line, man, you're still going to see that guy go for a win. He's got to get one on white. He just does, because like I said before, he deserves it. He's put it through. You know, he's been at the front more than anybody. If you took the camera time and measured how often he's at the front, he's got more time at the front of these races than anyone else. Now, maybe it's because he's working too hard, but, you know, in this situation, it's a little different than, say, you know, being in a road race and being off the front, wasting a bunch of matches to try to get to the finish on your own. It's not the same dynamic. You know, you got to just keep doing what he's doing, because at one point, you know, you're gonna get it when you keep doing that. So
Right.
I definitely think that's gonna be the one. I've got my money on Anthony for this one.
Yeah, so no dark horses. You don't have any there's no dark horses. Anybody's been kind of lingering back a little bit. It's really been White, Powers, Anthony. Nobody you think like, maybe somebody's been coming into form a little bit when you've been out there, and like, wow, he's been mounting good chase. Or I mean, like, even like somebody like Tim, who was hanging with Powers for a while. So he kind of been showing some improved form. Where you're like, no, he might sneak in on the podium if he has a good day. And anybody see out there?
I'd love to see some of those guys get in there. You know, I mean, I haven't. The thing is our local guys, I haven't seen anyone really show true form other than Jones, and I don't know. Is Jones on the schedule for this weekend, or is he off?
I believe he's got a road conflict with his team. So he's going to be racing in PA. So he was in the first race, certainly, you know, representing the road side of it, and rode brilliantly for that race. I think. You know, you're looking at Kevin Edwards. Maybe he's been the top finishing amateur each time and ridden really well, and he was in that chase with Powers in the first race, where Powers was kind of trying to organize them a little bit, and I talked to them a little after in that one interview that I posted, where I said, you know, how come you couldn't get him going there? Like, you know, like you had enough guys, you know, you couldn't bring him back. And he said, well, it just didn't have the legs. You know, there was just that big of a difference in strength that day. But Kevin went with him when Powers finally dropped that chase group and said, okay, these guys aren't going to help me. I better go. Kevin's been the top finishing amateur both weeks. So I think he's your best shot.
Yeah, my experience with Kevin, just knowing him from year after year after year of cyclocross racing, road racing, gravel racing, he's always there. You know, this year his legs don't seem to be as fast as they were in the early season. Don't put that, you know, like, don't put him out for the rest of the season, because he will come on as fast as he possibly can. It's just that he just doesn't seem to have as fast of a leg as what those guys do this year. Last year he was in contention quite a bit. You know, he definitely gave some of those guys a little scare and a little push. It was at Prattsburgh, I think he was right up there. He was with Timmerman and Jones for a while at Prattsburgh for quite some time last year, and, you know, I think we'll see him definitely putting the fight down. I mean, I can't imagine that having the one weekend off of racing is going to give him enough to be that far ahead when he's, you know, 4 minutes down from those other guys. But you never know. I mean, Edwards has surprised me before. I mean, he's always fun to watch race.
Yeah.
He just
Well,
pushes and pushes.
and he loves it, and he loves going out and racing the harder competition. I
Yep.
love that about him. And we talked a little bit about, I don't know, he's roughly 45, so he could race Masters if he wanted to. And we talked a little bit about that. And he's like, he doesn't want to race Masters. He wants to go race those guys because he wants to try his best against that level. Like that's what he's there for. And he does it so brilliantly.
His I think the home front is definitely a constant challenge. I mean, his wife is a phenomenal runner and a phenomenal cyclist too. I mean, she does really well and a lot of the stuff she does. But I mean, she's an elite level track runner, and various other types of running events. She's always at the top of her level. I mean, I've actually watched her do a triathlon where she chicked every single guy. And pardon me for using that term, but every guy deserved to be chicked that day because she trounced the entire competition of the triathlon. Men, women, didn't matter. So, and she started behind the men, if I remember right, too. So he's got a big shoes to fill when it comes to like going up against,
and you're not, for anybody that knows her, you're not exaggerating. That's 100% true. She's a phenomenal athlete. And then I think also we got to give some credit to Trevor August. He's I think he's 16 now. And he came across as the second amateur in the field the other day and got on the state podium with Curtis, which was a huge accomplishment for him. And I think he's been training, but he didn't make the first race because he was sick. So he was still kind of fighting being sick and had a really brilliant performance in the elite field as a young kid. So he's just going to get stronger at his age. So I don't know if we'll see him win that mix, on Saturday with those guys, but you'll see him in that mix with those guys pretty soon.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've seen him coming up through the racing. I mean, again, a kid who's got family genes of racing bicycles. He's definitely got a lot of luck from home pushing him to get around the race course. So he definitely, he does well just because he's lived a lifestyle for so long. I can't remember if he was the one who flatted last year at the Ossian or not. I can't remember. One of their sons, the August boys, definitely flatted there, and we had to help him back in. But it took a bit because his goes back to what we try to carry on the NutriSupport bike. Unfortunately, his bike had a wheel that did not match the standards that we had on the motorcycle, so we had to change a flat for him. But yeah, so like it's great to watch those kids come up through racing and be involved with it. So I think it's definitely gonna do a really nice job racing this next weekend. So.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I think that kind of wraps it up, man. I really appreciate you coming on and giving us a breakdown. I'm looking forward to Saturday. Hills of High Tour registration is still open. So if you're interested, you're not registered yet. It's open on Bike Reg. So get on there and get registered for this final race because it's gonna be awesome. The course is really cool. I haven't ridden it in its entirety. I kind of rode a bunch of sections with it, so I ended up about the same distance with Andy a couple weeks ago. He kicked my butt all over the course for like 3 hours, but looking at the different climbs and stuff. But it's got some really big climbs, and it's got a really technical descent, more technical than anything we've put out before. I've got some GoPro footage that I'm going to throw out probably tomorrow on that, so it should make the racing really interesting.
Yeah, that'll be cool to see. Yeah. I had a conversation with Andy earlier in the year when we were setting up everything for the NutriSupport. I do believe we won't have a four-wheeler on course for this race. I think we'll have a car. He said that we'd be able to get around the full course with one of the cars, which means we can offer a little bit better support for some of the racers towards the back of the group and have more bikes and have more wheels and extra this and extra that. So I think that's one of our plans right now for the race. To be set for that, but yeah, I can't wait to get out there. I've known Andy for forever, so I'm pleased to get out and work one of his events this year and be involved with him.
Yeah, he's a great guy, and I've looked up to him for a long time, and he's put on a lot of races, and I'm really excited that he's doing our race and this year and is part of the series this year for the first time. So I'm sure it's going to be an awesome event, and we'll put a GoPro on you again so we can get some footage, and we'll put that back out. We'll get one on Curtis and maybe somewhere else. And if if you haven't already, go to the YouTube channel and check out the GoPro footage from the first two. Jeremy got some really, really cool stuff. The hard part was figuring out where to cut to make it so that it wasn't, 6 hours long, because there's so much good stuff. I was just going through it over and over and over again. I was texting you. I was like, oh my God, this is so good. It's coming. I'm going to get it done. But it's just so much to go through. So
yeah, one of these days we'll have to all sit down and like do a Phil Liggett, Paul Sherwin, Bob Roll style commentary of a race from start to finish if we have a chance to, and see what we can come up with. I think it'd be pretty funny.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. I don't know if anybody would want to sit there and listen to it, but we'd have a good time.
Who knows? If we get enough beers in us during the recording of it, we might have a really good thing.
Might be onto something. So, no, it was awesome stuff, and I enjoyed the compilation video. So, if people haven't gone to the website yet, to looking at it, it is good. Gives you some really good perspective, and I think you get a sense of some of the speed. Sometimes some of the angles that you got, Jeremy, were really good. As they kind of hit some of those sections, you're like, wow, those guys are really motoring. And you're going to think, well, it's gravel, but man, if that's hard packed and stuff, those guys are carrying close to 40K an hour on some of those sections, and that's no joke, man. That's moving. So a lot of respect to those guys. As coming from a non-gravel guy, yeah, tons of respect there for sure. And even navigating that stuff at speed. I mean, and yourself included, like you said, with some of those potholes and things on the bikes, I was like, man, you got your stuff together, man. That's no joke. And when people may not realize either, your job when you're out there on the motorcycle stuff, your eyes in the back of your head. Because you can't just go cut over if you just went by a guy because there's a big hole there. So really kind of keeping those guys safe while you're trying to be there for them, give them time splits right on a time board, yell things, give up water. I mean, you're doing the job of 6 people. So awesome job, man. And really, really cool stuff to see.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I mean, it's really tough, like having the motorcycle. You're definitely, like you said, eyes in the back of your head. You're looking at what's coming from behind. You're looking at everything, making sure that the riders are safe, because that's number one. That's the first thing to think when we're out there, is that riders are safe. So for sure.
All right,
cool.
Guys, well, awesome. Good convo, and check out the video, and we'll see you on Saturday for the championship race.
All right, guys. Well, good luck, and I'll be looking for some more great videos.
A girl that surely deserves me, but I think you do. Another way to make you stay.